everyone, I'm Miss Mary Beth. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Ingalls Memorial Library in Ringe, and I'm here today for Armchair Adventures. And that's where every day we read a little bit of a book to you, and eventually we finish a whole book together. And the book we're reading right now that we just started is The Voyages of Doctor Dolittle. And this was written by Hugh Lofting. And I'm pretty excited because this is part of our summer reading program. So if you're listening, then you get to get a raffle ticket. You get to earn a raffle ticket when I say the code word, and you can type it into your READSquared account online and get credit just for watching this. So, where we left off was we met a boy named Stubbins, and he lives in this little town, and he finds a squirrel that was he got a little hurt. So, the boy is going to find Dr. Dolittle, who's supposedly very good with animals, and he talks to them. But we haven't met Dr. Dolittle yet, so that's where we left off. So chapter 3 is called The Doctor's Home. One Monday afternoon towards the end of April, my father asked me to take some shoes which he had mended to a house on the other side of town. They were for Colonel Bellows, who was very particular. I found the house and rang the bell at the front door. The colonel opened it, stuck out a very red face, and said, "Go round to the tradesmen's entrance. Go to the back door." Then he slammed the door shut. I felt inclined to throw the shoes in the middle of his flower bed, but I thought my father might be angry, so I didn't. I went round to the back door, and there the colonel's wife met me and took the shoes from me. She looked a timid little woman, and had flour all over her hands as though she were making bread. She seemed to be terribly afraid of her husband, whom I could still hear stumping round the house somewhere, grunting indignantly because I had come to the front door. Then she asked me in a whisper if I would have a bun and a glass of milk, and I said, "Yes, please." After I had eaten the bun and the milk, I thanked the colonel's wife and I came away. Then I thought that before I went home I would go and see if the doctor had come back yet. I had been to his house once already that morning, but I thought I would just like to go and take another look. My squirrel wasn't getting any better, and I was beginning to be worried about him. So I turned to the Oxenthorpe Road and started off toward the doctor's house. On the way I noticed that the sky was clouding over, and that it looked as though it might rain. I reached the gate and I found it still locked. I felt very discouraged. I'd been coming up here every day for a week now. The dog, Chip, came to the gate and wagged his tail as usual, and then he sat down and watched me closely to see that I didn't get in. I began to fear that my squirrel would die before the doctor came back. I turned away sadly, I went down the steps to the road, and turned towards home again. I wondered if it were supper time yet. Of course I had no watch of my own, but I noticed a gentleman coming towards me down the road, and when he got nearer I saw it was the colonel out for a walk. He was all wrapped up in smart overcoats and mufflers and bright-colored gloves. It was not a very cold day, but he had so many clothes on that he looked like a pillow inside of a roll of blankets. I asked him if he would please tell me the time. He stopped, grunted, glared down at me, and his red face was growing redder still, and when he spoke it sounded like the cork coming out of a ginger beer bottle. "Do you imagine that for one moment that I am going to get myself all unbuttoned just to tell a little boy like you the time?" And he went stumping down the street, grunting harder than ever. I stood still a moment looking after him and wondering how old I would have him go to the trouble of getting his watch out. And then, all of a sudden, the rain came down in torrents. I have never seen it rain so hard. It got dark, almost like night. The wind began to blow, the thunder rolled, the lightning flashed, and in a moment the gutters of the road were flowing like a river. There was no place handy to take shelter, so I put my head down against the driving wind, and I started to run towards home. I hadn't gone very far when my head bumped into something soft, and I sat down suddenly on the pavement. I looked up to see whom I had run into. And there, in front of me, sitting on the wet pavement like myself, was a little round man with a very kind face. He wore a shabby high hat, and in his hand he had a small black dog. "I'm very sorry," I said. "I had my head down, and I didn't see you coming." To my great surprise, instead of getting angry at being knocked down, the little man began to laugh. "You know, this reminds me," he said, "of a time once when I was in India. I ran full tilt into a woman in a thunderstorm. But she was carrying a pitcher of molasses on her head, and I had treacle in my hair for weeks afterwards. The flies followed me. I didn't hurt you, did I?" "No," I said. "I'm all right." "I was just as much my fault as yours, you know," said the little man. "I had my head down, too. But, look here, we mustn't sit talking like this. You must be soaked." "I know I am. How far have you got to go?" "My home is on the other side of town," I said, as we picked ourselves up. My goodness, but that was a wet pavement, he said. And I declare it's coming down worse than ever. Come along to my house and get dried. A storm like this can't last. He took hold of my hand and we started running back down the road together. As we ran, I began to wonder who this funny little man could be and where he lived. I was a perfect stranger to him, and yet he was taking me to his own home to get dried. Such a change after the old red-faced colonel who had refused to even tell me the time. Eventually we stopped. Here we are, he said. I looked up to see where we were, and I found myself back at the foot of the steps leading to the little house with the big garden. My new friend was already running up the steps and opening the gate with some keys he took from his pocket. Surely, I thought, this cannot be the great Dr. Dolittle. I suppose, after hearing so much about him, I'd expected someone very tall and strong and marvelous. It was hard to believe that this funny little man with the kind, smiling face could really be him. Yet, here he was, sure enough, running up the steps and opening the very gate which I had been watching for so many days. The dog, Jip, came rushing out and started jumping up on him and barking with happiness. The rain was splashing down heavier than ever. Are you Dr. Dolittle? I shouted as we sped up the short garden path to the house. Yes, I'm Dr. Dolittle, said he, opening the front door with the same bunch of keys. Get in. Don't bother about wiping your feet. Never mind the mud. Take it in with you. Get in out of the rain. I popped in, he and Jip following. Then he slammed the door behind us. The storm had made it dark enough outside, but inside the house, with the door closed, it was black as night. Then began the most extraordinary noise that I have ever heard. It sounded like all sorts and kinds of animals and birds calling and squeaking and screeching at the same time. I could hear things trundling down the stairs and hurrying along passages. Somewhere in the dark, a duck was quacking, a rooster was crowing, a dove was cooing, an owl was hooting, a lamb was bleating, and Jip was barking. I felt the bird's wings fluttering and fanning near my face. Things kept bumping into my legs and nearly upsetting me. The whole hall seemed to be filling up with animals. The noise, together with the roaring of the rain, was tremendous, and I was beginning to grow a little bit scared, when I felt the doctor take hold of my arm and shout into my ear, Don't be alarmed! Don't be frightened! These are just some of my pets. I've been away 3 months, and they are glad to see me home again. Stand still where you are until I strike a light. My goodness, what a storm! Just listen to that thunder. So there I stood in the pitch-black dark, while all kinds of animals, which I couldn't see, chattered and jostled around me. It was a curious and funny feeling. I'd often wondered, when I looked in from the front gate, what Dr. Dolittle would be like, and what the funny little house would have inside it. But I never imagined it would be anything like this. Yet, somehow, after I'd felt the doctor's hand upon my arm, I was not frightened, only confused. It all seemed like some strange dream, and I was beginning to wonder if I was really awake when I heard the doctor speaking again. My blessed matches are all wet. They won't strike. Have you got any? No, I'm afraid I haven't, I called back. Never mind, said he. Perhaps Dab-Dab can raise us a light somewhere. Then the doctor made some funny clicking noises with his tongue, and I heard someone trundle up the stairs again and start moving about in the rooms above. Then we waited quite a while without anything happening. Will the light be long in coming, I asked. Some animal is sitting on my foot, and my toes are going to sleep. No, only a minute, said the doctor. She'll be back in a minute. And just then I saw the first glimmerings of a light around the landing above. All at once the animals kept quiet. I thought you lived alone, I said to the doctor. So I do, said he. It is Dab-Dab who is bringing the light. I looked up the stairs, trying to make out who was coming. I could not see the landing, but I heard the most curious footsteps on the upper flight. It sounded like someone hopping down from one step to the other, as though he were using only one leg. As the light came lower, it grew brighter and began to throw strange jumping shadows on the walls. Ah, at last, said the doctor. Good old Dab-Dab. Then I thought I really must be dreaming, for there, craning her neck round the bend of the landing, hopping down the stairs on one leg, came a spotless white duck. And in her right foot she carried a lit candle. Oh my goodness. That's so silly. What an impressive duck. That was the end of Chapter 3. Chapter 4 is called The Whiff-Waff. When at last I could look around me, I found that the hall was indeed simply full of animals. It seemed to me that almost every kind of creature from the countryside must be there. A pigeon, a white rat, an owl, a badger, a jackdaw. There was even a small pig, just in from the rainy garden, carefully wiping his feet on the mat, while the light from the candle glistened on his wet pink back. The doctor took the candlestick from the duck and turned to me. "Look here," he said. "You must get those wet clothes off. By the way, what is your name?" "Tommy Stubbins," I said. "Oh, are you the son of Jacob Stubbins, the shoemaker?" "Yes," I said. "Excellent bootmaker, your father," said the doctor. "You see these?" And he held up his right foot to show me the enormous boots he was wearing. "Your father made me those boots 4 years ago, and I've been wearing them ever since. Perfectly wonderful boots. Well, now, look here, Stubbins. You've got to change those wet things, and quick. Wait a moment till I get some candles lit, and then we'll go upstairs and find some dry clothes. You'll never have to wear an old suit of mine till we can get yours dry again by the kitchen fire." So presently, when more candles had been lighted around different parts of the house, we went upstairs, and when we had come into a bedroom, the doctor opened a big wardrobe, and he took 2 suits of old clothes. These we put on. Then we carried our wet ones down to the kitchen, and we started a fire in the big chimney. The coat of the doctor's, which I was wearing, was so large for me that I kept treading on my own coat-tails while I was helping to fetch the wood from the cellar. But very soon we had a huge big fire blazing up the chimney, and we hung our wet clothes round on chairs. "Now, let's cook some supper," said the doctor. "You'll stay and have supper with me, Stubbins, of course." Already I was beginning to be very fond of this funny little man who called me Stubbins instead of Tommy or little lad. This man seemed to begin right away treating me as though I were a grown-up friend of his. And when he asked me to stop and have supper with him, I felt terribly proud and happy. But I suddenly remembered that I had not told my mother that I would be out late. So very sadly I answered, "Thank you very much. I would like to stay, but I'm afraid my mother will begin to worry and wonder when I don't get back." "Oh, but my dear Stubbins," said the doctor, "your clothes aren't dry yet. You'll have to wait for them, won't you? By the time they're ready to be put on, we'll have supper cooked and eaten." "Did you see where I put my bag?" "I think it's still in the hall," I said. "I'll go see." I found the bag near the front door. It was made of black leather and looked very, very old. One of its latches was broken, and it was tied up round the middle with a piece of string. "Thank you," said the doctor, when I brought it to him. "Was that bag all the luggage you had for your voyage?" I asked. "Yes," said the doctor, as he undid the piece of string. "I don't believe in a lot of luggage. It's such a nuisance. Life's too short to fuss with it. And it really isn't necessary. You know. Where did I put those sausages?" The doctor was feeling about inside the bag. First he brought out a loaf of new bread. Next came a glass jar with a curious metal top on it. He held this up to the light very carefully before he set it down on the table, and I could see that there was some strange little water creature swimming about inside. At last the doctor brought out a pound of sausage. "Now," he said, "all we want is a frying pan." We went into the scullery, and there we found some pots and pans hanging against the wall. The doctor took down the frying pan. It was quite rusty on the inside. "Dear me, just look at that," he said. "That's what's being away from the house for so long. The animals are very good and keep the house wonderfully clean as far as they can. Dab-Dab is a perfect marvel as a housekeeper. But some things, of course, they can't manage. Never mind, we'll soon clean it up. You'll find some silver sand down there, under the sink, Stubbins. Just hand it up to me, will you?" In a few moments we had the pan all shiny and bright, and the sausages were put over the kitchen fire, and a beautiful frying smell went all through the house. While the doctor was busy at the cooking, I went and I took another look at the funny little creature swimming about in the glass jar. "What is that animal?" I asked. "Oh, that," said the doctor. "It's a whiff-waff. Its full name is Hippocampus pittopotamus, but the natives just call it a whiff-waff. On account of the way it waves its tail swimming, I imagine. That's what I went on this last voyage for, to get that. You'll see, I'm very busy just now trying to learn the language of the shellfish. They have languages, of that I feel sure. I can talk a little shark language and porpoise dialect myself, but what I particularly want to learn is shellfish." "Why?" I asked. "Well, you see, some of the shellfish are the oldest kind of animals in the world that we know of. We find their shells in the rocks, turned to stone, thousands of years old. So I feel quite sure that if I could only get to talk their language, I should be able to learn a whole lot about what the world was like ages and ages and ages ago. You see?" "But couldn't some of the other animals tell you as well?" I asked. "I don't think so," said the doctor, prodding the sausages with a fork. "To be sure, the monkeys I knew in Africa some time ago were very helpful in telling me about bygone days, but they only went back 1,000 years or so. No, I'm certain that the oldest history in the world is to be had from the shellfish, and from them only. You see, most of the other animals that were alive in those very ancient times have now become extinct." "Have you learned any shellfish language yet?" I asked. "No, I've only just begun. I wanted this particular kind of pipefish because he is half shellfish and half an ordinary fish. I went all the way to the eastern Mediterranean after him. But I'm very much afraid he isn't going to be a great deal of help to me. To tell you the truth, I'm rather disappointed in his appearance. He doesn't look very intelligent, does he? He doesn't, I agreed. Ah, said the doctor. The sausages are done to a turn. Come on, hold your plate near, and let me give you some. Then we sat down at the kitchen table, and we started a hearty meal. It was a wonderful kitchen, that. I had many meals there afterwards, and I found it a better place to eat than the grandest dining room in the world. It was so cozy and homelike and warm. It was so handy for the food, too. You took it right off the fire, hot, and you put it on the table and ate it. And you could watch your toast toasting at the fender and see that it didn't burn while you drank your soup. And if you had forgotten to put the salt on the table, you didn't have to go up into another room to fetch it. You just reached around and took the big wooden box off the dresser behind you. Then the fireplace, the biggest fireplace you ever saw, was like a room in itself. You could get right inside it when the logs were burning and sit on the wide seats on either side and roast chestnuts after the meal was over. Or you could listen to the kettle singing or tell stories or look at the picture books by the light of the fire. It was a marvelous kitchen. It was like the doctor, comfortable, sensible, friendly, and solid. While we were gobbling away, the door suddenly opened and in marched the duck, Dab Dab, and the dog, Jip, dragging sheets and pillowcases behind them over the clean tiled floor. The doctor, seeing how surprised I was, explained, "They're just going to air the bedding for me in front of the fire. Dab Dab is a perfect treasure of a housekeeper. She never forgets anything. I had a sister once who used to keep house for me. Poor dear Sarah. I wonder how she's getting on. I haven't seen her in many years. But she wasn't nearly as good as Dab Dab. Have another sausage?" The doctor turned and said a few words to the dog and the duck in some strange talk and signs. They seemed to understand him perfectly. "Can you talk in squirrel language?" I asked. "Oh, yes, that's quite an easy language," said the doctor. "You learned that yourself without a great deal of trouble." "Well, why would you ask?" "Because I have a sick squirrel at home," I said. "I took it away from a hawk, but 2 of its legs are badly hurt, and I wanted very much to have you see it, if you would. Shall I bring it tomorrow?" "Well, if its leg is badly broken, I think I'd better see it tonight. It may be too late to do much, but I'll come home with you and I'll take a look at it." So presently we felt the clothes by the fire, and mine were found to be quite dry. I took them upstairs to the bedroom and changed, and when I came down the doctor was all ready, waiting for me with his little black bag full of medicines and bandages. "Come along. The rain has stopped now." Outside it had grown bright again, and the evening sky was all red with the setting sun, and the thrushes were singing in the garden as we opened the gate to go down onto the road. And that's the end of Chapter 4. So we'll find out tomorrow what happens in Chapter 5 when he meets the squirrel. I hope the doctor can save the squirrel. So if you've been listening, thanks for listening. The code word for today is downpour, because that's how we met the doctor. So go into your READSquared account and type it in and get a raffle ticket. Thanks for reading with me. Have a fun day.